Turning make.com from a no-code tool into a low-code tool. Why on earth would anyone do that? This is the question of this video. And not only that, I'm also going to show you why you might want to do the exact same thing. Now, that's obviously not all of it. I'm also going to share with you completely for free what I'm about to show you. And trust me, you want to see that because it's gonna be amazing. Now, first of all, I would like to talk a little bit more about why we use make.com in the first place, which mostly is obviously to eliminate the need for manual processes so we can automate them and save time in the long term, right? So time saving is obviously a massive aspect. Now, while make.com is awesome if it comes to that, there are some downsides. Let's, for example, assume we are going to build out a scenario that is a little bit more complex, meaning that it's not just having a single module that we connect to an external service and get back information and send that somewhere else. But let's actually say we do a lot of data manipulation, which is the case in my agency, for example. So let's say we need to iterate over certain values. We need to iterate over arrays. So if we get, for example, available time slots, we often need to iterate through them and check if they're actually valid, etc. Need to validate them and so on. And all of this basically takes a lot of operations and makes it pretty complex for building it out. And as you can imagine, we really value quality inside of our agency. So making sure that everything works properly is extremely important for us. Now, because we are so precise and picky if it comes to the outcomes, we often build out scenarios that cover more use cases than the majority of people would cover. And this is not because we would like to, but because we know it is important to actually have a product that is successful in the end. And that often brings us to the issue that we need to iterate through more things. We need to create extra logic that is not necessary if I would just send something somewhere and just like hope it's okay, right? We do a lot of data validation, which also comes along with complex manipulations, meaning that we use the iterator module in make.com a lot of times. We use collectors a lot where you loop through and you do different validations and calculations. And we have now seen it over the past couple of months many times that building out those complex workflows works, but adjusting them again makes things complicated. So we identified two problems there. Number one is obviously building out those workflows with a lot of more use cases and iterating through values and validating them, etc. is a massively tedious process. You need to build out that scenario, you need to do tons of testing, you obviously use some of the credits along the way as well, and it's just not that fun to debug. Secondly, in case you would like to make adjustments to that, you probably know adjustments to those kind of iterators is not a fun thing either, because you need to do usually a lot of more manipulations, getting variables, setting variables, validating them. There might be some issues as well, you need to fix them again. And that kind of like misses the goal of what we would like to achieve with make.com, which is obviously saving time. So it's not only that we want to save time for the customer, no, we also want to save time for ourselves so that we can be more efficient when delivering voice solutions or in general automations, right? So making sure that we have a process in place that allows us basically to customize things faster, more efficiently, and allows us as well to be more flexible with our clients. Let's say they have some adjustments or something changes in the data structure, we can react on it. This is like for us the main purpose if it comes to automations. We want to make sure that we and the customer stuff is as efficient as possible. Now, with all of that said, you probably get it that even using make.com and having everything on the platform to make it work is not always the best approach to use whatever they have on the platform, which is why we created this video, because we basically created a process on how we can outsource more complex tasks into low code, meaning that we actually use custom code. And it's important to mention before I go deeper into that, we don't write most of the code ourselves, or we do in some cases, of course, but what I'm going to show you today doesn't require you to actually understand or completely read or program. We use and leverage ChatGPT in that case that generates the code for us so that we can use it to do more complex data manipulations without the complex need of building everything out inside of make.com. Now, you've probably been there that you needed to kind of loop through something and you needed to create iterators, you get variables, you save that stuff somewhere. You know that building that stuff out takes quite a bit of time. And before I'm actually showing you how to set this whole thing up, I would like to show you how that actually looks in practice and what I actually mean by saving time with this, because this is such an incredible, powerful thing that you can do massive amounts with it. And not just for like data validation, but also for a lot of other things. But it's probably gonna get more clear once you see it. So let's dive right on my screen here. You can see that I have a make.com scenario open that has two modules. The first one is set busy slots, which is nothing else than something that sets variables. And if we look into it, we literally just have a variable name called busy slots. And as a variable value, we have 3 time slots in Zulu time, meaning UTC, for at 1 p.m., 1:30, and 4 p.m. The way we, and hopefully you interpret that, is that these are busy slots, meaning from a calendar that have a booking at 1, at 1:30, and at 4 p.m. And now we often face the case that we would, for example, like to get the free slots for a given day based on the busy slots that come in, right? So what we would need to do is we would need to build up a new array and then parse this array back to JSON and do a couple of API calls to make sure everything works properly. And as you can imagine, doing that inside of make.com is possible, but it is not our favorite approach anymore, as it just takes a lot of time to maintain, to build out, to test, and to debug in case something goes wrong. And this is exactly why we developed what we developed, which is basically just a more efficient possibility of executing custom code directly inside of make.com so that we can remove the need of doing everything visually inside of make, and we can outsource it via a simple text, via a simple code snippet into a custom module. I could basically say as well that what we're going to do now is literally just executing code to do something, and there are tons of modules available as well. But before I'm going to do that, I'm going to show you what we actually do. So we now have those busy slots here, and when I run this, basically I ran that here already, so we can just check it out. You can see the busy slots come out as JSON. I feed them into this module, and what we get back inside of the data module right here is a completely set up result with all of the available slots for a given day. And you can see that this starts now from 12 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. This is because it's my local time zone. If you're actually looking into the output bundles, you can see that the day starts from 8 a.m. and it ends at 5 p.m. And what you see here is basically the available slots based on the busy slots we provided without the busy slots, so that we can basically generate available slots that we can, for example, feed back to our voice assistant and say, yep, look, these are the available slots. Choose one of them that suits you best, maybe do some more validation on top and just provide a couple of those and then ship it over, right? But what I want to show you is that instead of building all of the iterators, the variables, fetching and everything, we literally just use a single module to do that exact same thing, and it is incredibly efficient as well, and it takes us way less time to debug. And the best part of it is we can literally customize it in a couple of seconds. Now, how does it look? We have a custom URL. In that case, it's a custom server. I'm going to explain you all of that in detail, and trust me, you don't need any kind of technical knowledge to make that work. It is very easy. You just need to follow this tutorial step by step, and you can have the exact same outcome of what we are building right here. So in the end, it's basically just a post request to a URL with some authentication, and you can see right within here, we have a certain code, and this code is executed somewhere. Now, this is literally something we implemented on a custom server, meaning that what we built out here is a custom server that is hosted somewhere where we basically want it to be hosted. And all make.com does is it literally just sends the information we want as code to the server. The server validates the code, does whatever manipulation it needs, and sends back something to make.com. And all of this is basically happening nearly instantaneously whenever this element is called. And you can see here, based on this code, that we basically feed in the busy slots from that module, and we basically just returning something. And this something is what we see then as a response inside of the data section right here, which is the validated dates. As you can imagine, this is literally custom code, and meaning that you can literally feed in mostly whatever you would like into that custom code module. This is, by the way, JavaScript, and it will just return you something back. So you can imagine that you have mostly all of the options available to have it do whatever you would like. Not meaning just data validation, but maybe even sending information to some other webhooks and having everything directly inside of one block instead of having multiple requests within the make.com automations to do certain things. You can actually directly put it inside of this module. Now, there might be people that ask why actually combine everything into one module if we actually can build it out in make.com in the first place. And the answer to that is that this is just more cost efficient from the make side, and it is also easier to maintain. Now, we can also see this whole thing from the opposite side. So if there's someone that, for example, criticizes why we use make in the first place if we are using custom code. This is mostly because make.com is incredibly good in task management, meaning it can schedule tasks and make sure that a queue is properly executed without any kind of failure, or if it fails, we can just like re-execute it afterwards. So instead of us setting up a complete and complex infrastructure for that client to do queue management and task management, meaning like when this is executed, then do this. When this is executed, do the next thing. If something doesn't work, we need to have some kind of way of debugging and basically restarting this whole thing over and over again. This is still the reason why we prefer make.com, and which also comes back to our main goal, which is just optimizing our processes and just saving ourselves time. Like, we are obviously not bound to make.com. We love make.com because it's awesome. But as you can see, even though we could build these kind of solutions inside of make.com, we prefer to outsource that inside of custom code to a custom solution. Now, to actually give you another example, what I'm going to do is, and this is also what I'm going to share with you and what you also find inside of my resource hub, because everything I'm going to show you here in this video will be completely available for free inside of my resource hub, so you can simply download it and follow me along the screen. Now, once you head over it, you will find a GitHub repository, which looks something like this. Now, once you're on the repository, you will see a markdown or a README file, which is here, which is basically an explanation on how you can test it and how you can make it work. And what I'm going to do now is I just copy this example here so you actually see that it works and how it works inside of make.com. So let's, for example, say instead of getting the dates back, you would like to have some other kind of module that does something else. So in my case, I'm just going to use that example snippet, which literally just returns hello world. So now when we run that and click on run module only, you can see that as a response, we get back a 200. And in the data section, you can see that we return hello world, which is the exact code that we would like to get back from within this function. So you can see we have a function here, which is called hello world, and it just returns a greeting. And this greeting is literally just fed into a variable called result, and result is being returned. This is just a basic explanation of that example. You obviously don't need to understand the code itself, and I'm going to show you also how you can actually leverage that without knowing any kind of custom code, because we are leveraging ChatGPT to create those prompts for us that basically generate the code. Since you should now at least grasp the concept that what we basically do is save ourselves time by outsourcing complex manipulations to data from within make.com to our very own server. Now there's another question that I'm 100% sure is going to be asked, which is why am I not already using a predefined integration that is already hosted and available on make.com to execute things like JavaScript or Python? And there are a couple of reasons why I'm not preferring them. I'm going to share them with you now. So let's, for example, look at this tool. It's called Zero Code Util, and it's one of the options that allows you to execute JavaScript inside of make.com with a predefined module, meaning that if I, for example, add a new module here, I can search for Zero Code Util, and it will basically show me a code kit, right? Or this one as well. I can basically use that to do custom code manipulations. The issue is that, again, this is a custom SaaS tool and they charge you money for it. And the solution I'm going to show you is probably the most efficient and cost-effective one that you can have, which kind of like outrules all of those other SaaS platforms that offer the same kind of JavaScript executions. Obviously, if you need more specific and precise features, some of them maybe make sense, but I would say if you just want to do data manipulation the way we do it, the solution I'm going to show you is definitely the most cost-efficient one and the easiest one to set up and the easiest one to scale in case you really go nuts. And if we talk about pricing, you can see, for example, that even with this solution here, you get a certain amount of credits a month, which is something I just don't like, especially for custom code execution. 5,000 credits a month means probably 5,000 operations, which is an okayish price. There are some that are definitely way more expensive than this one. But then here you are like at $15 for 15,000, etc. The setup I'm showing you literally costs you $7 a month, and you can just scale with this thing indefinitely. So while it stays at kind of like $7 if you don't upscale the server, let's say that. So you definitely have more executions than what they charge here, $5 for. So you will probably never run out of that in the first place. And instead of paying for operations, all you do is basically pay for the server. Now, with that out of the way, let's actually head into it so I can show you how to set that up on your side. So it only takes a couple of minutes and it's actually going to be very simple. So the number one thing you do is you head to the GitHub repository that you will find inside of my resource hub in the link that is mentioned below in the description. You can simply head over there, create an account, and you get access to this whole thing. Now, once you are on this page, you will basically be able to get a URL, which we then implement into another platform, which is called Render. Render looks something like what you see right now on the screen, which is nothing else than an infrastructure provider, which you can use to actually buy, manage, and scale servers. Now, you don't need to understand anything about the server stuff itself. I pre-created everything so that you literally need to add an URL, and the rest is basically automatically set up for you without you doing any kind of technical things. All you would need to do is you would need to head up here, go to Get Started, create an account, and log in. By the way, the setup I'm showing you is also completely for free in the basic version, meaning that it will set up a completely free server that you can use for testing purposes without paying any money for it. Now, obviously, if you would like to take it on a live system, you do want to sign up for their $7 plan to just get the server running and making sure it's not going into standby mode, meaning that it takes a while for the first request after a certain amount of minutes to actually get this thing running again, right? This is not what we want with automations. So that's why if you test it, it's completely perfect if you just use the free server that this whole setup is started on. But if you really want to take this into a testing environment, all you would do is literally just sign up for their $7 plan, which is more than enough, especially if it comes to custom execution. And then you can literally just scale it from there. And now once you created the account, you simply log into it, then you head back over to the GitHub repository that I shared with you. You click here on code, you copy this URL by clicking on this icon, and then you head back into Render. Now inside of Render, I have a couple of servers here that you will probably not have. So instead of worrying about the servers and instead of clicking on new, which is what you can do if you want to set up a custom server, what we do is we go here over to Blueprints, and once you have Blueprints, you click here on New Blueprint Instance. Now, when you scroll down, you can see here public GitHub repositories or public Git repositories. This is where you paste the URL that you just copied. You click on Continue, and now you will be prompted to actually add a blueprint name, which is basically the name of the server that you're going to set up. So what I would do is I would probably call it make.com JavaScript API, something like that. The branch you can keep as main. And right within here, you're also prompted to enter a value for the secure token. And this is a very, very important one, because the way this little code snippet or this repository works is that it can execute any kind of code on your given server, meaning that this server, obviously in that case, is only used for data manipulation, and it can execute any kind of code. And obviously, you want to make sure your authentication is secure and that other people cannot access your server and use it for their purposes, which may be malicious. You want to keep that always very secure and safe and not share that with anyone. That's why I recommend you to set a token here that is at least, let's say, 24 characters long. I think that's like a minimum you should have. You can also click here on generate, which just generates a token, which in my opinion is too short. So I would probably even just add like some more complex token, and this is the one you're going to use. Now in my case, I'm going to copy that one. I just added it, and then it's important that you also, by the way, save the token or copy the token yourself. And all you would need to do now is click on deploy blueprint. And now we literally just have to wait until this blueprint has been deployed as a server, and you can see the progress right within here. Now, while this is running, all you can do is you can sit back, relax, maybe even read through the README down here, because that is the next couple of steps that we are going through. Now, actually, while this is deploying, I'm using this time to go over the manual a little bit more, so you can actually understand what's going on here, because this setup is, as you can see here, this is basically what we just did right now. We literally just deployed the server on render. You can literally follow those URLs as well. And then I have here another section which is called testing with Postman, because this can also be used obviously not just with make.com, but with any kind of other platform out there, meaning Zapier, meaning your very own setup, meaning Postman. Anything can be integrated that has an API or can send a request from somewhere else. And then you can leverage that in that platform, whatever that looks like. Now, this in here is very important because you can literally replicate that exact same setup inside of make.com to get everything set up. And this is what we can do now in the meantime. So instead of logging into Postman, what we would do is we would create a request, but we would do the same thing inside of make.com. So let's simply head over to make.com. And all we would do is now, let me just disconnect that part. And I'm just going to add a new HTTP module. And I'm going to select the make a request action, because that is the one we are going to use. I keep everything in here for now as, I keep the arrow status as default for now. I just want to set here parse response to yes, because in the end, we don't want to have just a JSON string back. We want to actually have the validated information back. That's very important. And now here as a method, we are going to select the post method, which you can also see directly inside here. You can see it's a post request. And now we need to add this URL, which is the server URL, which should be ready once that whole thing has been deployed and set up. Now, once this actually has been deployed, all I would do is I would literally head over to the dashboard. I open the server, which is the one that we basically just created. And you can see as well, this is the one. If we go to settings, you can see that the whole setup, in my case, the server is hosted in Frankfurt, because that is what I selected inside the blueprint. Obviously, if you're, let's say, in the US, what you would do is you would literally just fork this whole template, adjust inside of the render.yaml file the location, which is that one, region Frankfurt. You just change that to Ohio, for example, or whatever is closer. You can see what's available on render. But by default, you don't need to do much for that. All we would need to do is we'd literally just continue with the manual by copying this URL here, which is your server URL. We're going to take that, we paste it inside of the URL field. And at the very end, you will now also see inside of the README file that you have a /execute path, which is the one we're going to copy, and we add at the very end of the URL. So this is how the URL should look like, which is the server URL /execute. It has a post method, and now we need to also set an authorization header, which you can see right here. It says basically set an authorization key. I'm going to copy that, head back into make.com. I click on add a header. In the name, I add authorization. And in the value field, I basically add the token that I just created as a secure token inside of the server setup. Now, you probably have copied it somewhere, so simply paste it in here. That is basically mine. And now what we need to do is we need to head to the body type. In the body type, you select raw. In the content type, you select text plain, because we are literally just using text to send over the request content. And in the request content, if you want, you can literally just use this example code that I provided here to see if the whole connection actually works. Now I'm gonna send this to OK. And if everything works out, let me just remove this so we actually see that a little bit better. Now, if the server is deployed, and you can also see that right within the event section, if it has been deployed, and it has been deployed, so now it should be active and live, meaning that we can actually fire this whole thing. and we get a response back. And you can see it is 200, which is what you would like to see. And inside the data section, we see hello world. Now to actually see that the code is executed, what we can also do is we can just change the output. Let's say hello Jannis, for example. I'm gonna send okay, I'm gonna execute this whole thing again. And now you will see in here, hello Jannis, meaning the code is executed, the whole thing works. That is awesome. Now, this is literally all you need to have for the basic setup, meaning now you're able to use this HTTP module with a request content to execute any kind of JavaScript code that you want. Until this point, this is literally just the setup, meaning that you would still need to write the JavaScript content yourself. But even for that, I'm going to show you now another optimization that is also added directly inside of the README file that I added here, which is when you scroll down here, use AI to generate your code. And in here, you will find a prompt example that allows you to basically do some kind of data manipulation and get you back whatever you would like inside of this response. So to make that fun, what I'm going to do is I literally just copy this example. I'm going to head over to ChatGPT. I paste it in the chat. And now we need to replace this part, your scope, with whatever we would like it to return or do inside of this specific element. So to actually show you how it works, what I'm going to do is I'm basically recreating what I did earlier, meaning that we have some busy slots here and I would like to get some non-busy slots, right? That you actually have some real use case here. So what I would do is I would click on here, I would just copy this variable value, which is the kind of JSON structure that we would get back. Let's, for example, say from something like Go High Level or whatever that service looks like that returns those busy slots, can be Google Calendar, etc. And now I would just define the scope here, meaning you can literally use natural language by just defining it without knowing any code. So I would remove that. And now we can say something like below is a JSON that contains all of the busy slots for a given calendar day. Please create a snippet that can return all of the free slots with 30 minutes in length, in duration, from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. And now I'm going to provide this JSON that I just defined. So I'm just gonna post it here and I'll literally just click return. And all we need to do now is wait until this JavaScript has been generated. And you can see here that it uses the busy slots. It basically creates a bunch of code lines. You can literally read through it. You can even ask it questions about it so you understand what's actually going on. And if let's say I'm not gonna read it at all, I would literally just copy that code. I would head over to make.com. I'll paste this thing inside of the request content. You can see it adds a space at the end or like a line break. I'm just gonna remove that. And I'm going to run this whole thing again. And you can say now in the data response, we get 200 back. And in the results, we literally get a list of all of the available times for that calendar that are basically free in case that were busy slots. And this literally just works out of the box. So you can literally just ask it questions after again and say, change the format, for example, instead of Zulu time, return something else, or maybe add like an hour to it, or whatever it is that you need to do as a data manipulation. You can literally just use the prompt to manipulate it or completely create it from scratch and even add external requests to it. And this is incredibly powerful, as you can see, because you literally do data manipulation directly inside of make.com without the need for setting iterators, routers, or whatever else it is that you would need to make this whole thing work. And all of that by literally just having a single module, not even coding yourself while using code and having a more advanced setup. Now, for all the programmers that are still watching and thinking, how does it work? For sure, he's using some weird stuff in the backend, and that is true. We're using some weird stuff in the backend. So if we're heading into the GitHub repository, you can see in here we are using the eval function, which is also considered the eval function, meaning that it can execute any kind of code on that server. So personally, from my programming experience, using the eval function is always a very critical task and it needs to be validated properly, meaning that other data can be exposed in case it's not used properly. But in that case, in my opinion, it is totally fine. And there are two reasons for that. Number one, the server you're using is literally just used for data manipulation. There's nothing else on it, meaning there's nothing else that can be stolen. It can be used maliciously in case your API key, the one that you basically set during the server setup, gets exposed, then other people can execute stuff on the server and use it for their purpose. In that case, you would just shut it down. You would set up the same thing again. Even though I don't believe this happens if you set up a proper token and you keep it secure, because that is the most important thing. And honestly, these are the only two things that I see as a more important thing to mention towards security, because I think it's just important that you know that and you understand the concept behind eval, because this eval function can literally just execute any kind of code on the server. But again, Like there's nothing else on it except of that. It is totally fine because you literally just use it for data manipulation. And now with that out of the way, I think you should probably grasp the concept and probably understand now a lot better why it makes sense to outsource certain tasks from make.com into custom code so that you can just be more efficient with it. And I'm more than happy, obviously, to share all of that stuff with you completely for free because I know that a lot of you are building those solutions for clients and you can definitely see a use case for that to make sure you can deliver faster projects and faster products to your clients, maybe even for your very own business. And I'm 100% sure that this not only saves you minutes, but this is going to save you hours and hours of development and debugging and programming and so many more tasks that count towards productivity. So this is going to be my goodie for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, you're most welcome to drop them below down in the comments. And lastly, before I head off, there's one more thing I would like to show you. Let's, for example, say something breaks inside of the code or something is wrong. Let's say wrong, which meaning this is code that literally doesn't make sense at all. I'm going to execute this thing, and you can see then that it runs into an error, meaning that something is wrong. This takes a while until it's executed, and then you will basically see something happen inside of the server that didn't work. And this basically means that something was wrong inside of the request, and then you would literally just take this thing and ask ChatGPT to fix it, and you would paste it again. Very important. In some cases, I know that this line break at the bottom made some issues. I'm not sure why. This is usually something that comes from ChatGPT. So by just removing it, you should be on the good side. I'm going to remove this part as well. Click OK. And now if I try it, it should work nearly instantly, as you can see. So it is quite fast and obviously a lot cheaper, a lot more efficient than other platforms. You don't need to set up an extra SaaS and pay for an extra SaaS. You literally just have a server that you can leverage for everything combined together for a cheaper rate and based on whatever you need to do with it. And in my opinion, this is just such a great hack that I really, really love to use, especially in my agency. And I hope it adds the value to your business as well. So that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you next time. Take care.